Lesley Dophin.
BBC Radio Suffolk.
Right now, it's time to pull up our virtual sofa, and my guest with us today is Jeff Stevens. We've spoken to Jeff a few times before. He's from the Pathways Care Farm, just north of Lowestoft. He's been involved with charity work for many years, but says that running the farm is the best thing he has ever done.
On the sofa.
BBC Radio Suffolk.
Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Leslie.
How are you?
I'm great. I don't know what all this doom and gloom's all about. It's the glorious sunshine here in Lowestoft. It's been like that all the way through so far.
Has it?
I don't know what the rest of the country's putting up with.
I know that you love doing what you do, don't you? Although it's been tough because you did have to close properly for a while, didn't you?
We did. Yeah, that was the toughest thing. I mean, we still had the farm and it was beautiful and the sun was shining and the birds were tweeting and there was no traffic to disturb us, but we couldn't have our farm workers, the clients that we look after, and that was really hard because they're what we do it for.
And I know that not all of them have managed to come back. Some of them have been poorly, and you've even lost some of them as well. Yeah,
tragically, I've had 2 funerals to go to, which are very weird things at the moment, when all the masks and no singing and not allowed to sort of embrace the loved ones and all that. It's very hard. Yeah, it's been a tough time for that, very hard.
Yeah. Just take me back. I know we've talked about it before, but just for those who don't know the story, explain how Pathways Care Farm came about.
Well, I'm actually a graphic designer by trade, and a number of years ago I got a bit disillusioned with the corporate world and I was looking for something else to do, and my wife and I had cared for her father for a number of years who had vascular dementia. He was a very creative man, carpenter and a builder, and when he was diagnosed there was very little to do in terms of services. He could go to a day centre and play bingo, but there was nothing really to stimulate his interests or his capabilities. And after he died, we looked around to see what more could be done to help people in that position, and hit upon the concept of care farming, which is becoming better known. It's not that well known really, but it's a vital facility. It's using a farm. It doesn't have to be a farm. It could be a garden. It could be a wood. It could be anywhere there's open space, getting outside in the countryside. And we look after people who have dementia, but we also look after people with learning difficulties, autism, and people who have mental ill health, which is rising as quickly as the pandemic at the moment. So it's a way of getting people out into the countryside and doing gardening, looking after animals, feeling the wind on their face, having company, getting away from loneliness and isolation of being bottled up in a room or somewhere like that, just the 4 walls around you. And there's so much research being done into the fact that this kind of green therapy, they call it, works. It's a tragedy that it's not being recognised more by the statutory services. Social services are very good and refer people to us, but the NHS have been a little bit slow. I love the NHS. I'm a great supporter of the NHS, as we all are. But tragically, GPs are so busy that if someone goes with mental health, they tend to write them a prescription for diazepam or something. What you really need is the opportunity to try and get out and feel the wind on your face and have the chance to grow some vegetables. It's a great way of getting in touch with the reality that is the opposite of dementia. Dementia, it helps, but also with mental health.
I think during lockdown, people discovered that, didn't they? Just going on their daily walks, just doing their gardens if they were lucky enough to have one. I think people suddenly did reconnect to a certain extent and discover what you've known. I mean, one thing I noticed in your notes that you sent to me is that your hobbies turn into passions, which turn into projects, and that's what's happened here. Because it's one thing to try and do something, another to take on a whole care farm, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it didn't sort of happen overnight. It took a few years to get it going, but the passion was... I tend to get passionate. You ask my wife, it's sort of, oh, no, not another idea. We were looking around for something to do. I was fed up with the corporate world, as I said, and I was thinking, well, maybe I could go and work in a garden centre and sell plants, because that's nice, and I love ponds and things. And And that turned into finding out about this idea of green therapy, and the chance came up to pitch for this farm in Lowestoft, 13 acres, beautiful farm on the edge of town, right near Tesco, perfect location. And we managed to get it. It was a derrick farm, so it took us years of just clearing the brambles and fixing roofs. We're still doing a lot of the repairs, still going on now. But we've been open for about 5 years, and it's just growing and growing. And the effects that we're having on people's lives are a tribute to the wonderful work of our volunteers, the fact that the therapy works, and it needs to be... I'm trying to proselytise this. I do get passionate about it, and I really want people to sit up and notice that getting out and about, as you say, we all found out during the pandemic, the beginning part, that going and growing a few flowers or vegetables was wonderful, going for a walk, because everyone lives busy lives, and you forget the fact that this is on our doorstep, I mean, especially in Suffolk. You know, what wonderful countryside. And to get out and do that is an amazing thing. It's great privilege. And unfortunately, if you're of a mental state where those decisions are usually made for you rather than you making them for yourself, you need facilities where people can take you to, and people can be looked after in that situation. They can't just say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to grow something. But we're there to help them do that.
And how many clients do you have that would come? Do they come every day? Do they come once a week? Or does it vary?
They tend to come once or twice a week for just during the day. We have, until the beginning of lockdown, we were having around about 50 to 55 people a week, so approximately 10 or 11 a day. We've cut that down now to about 5 a day because of the various restrictions that are around and not having too many people on site. So we tend to look after the people that we are possibly making the biggest difference with, and those who otherwise would be in a room and their mental health would be deteriorating, or they would be even more lonely and isolated.
I mean, you mentioned volunteers as well, so a lot of this is you couldn't do it without the volunteers. No,
volunteers are our lifeblood. They're incredible. If any of our volunteers are listening to this, then I just want to say thank you. I say that all the time. I'm always thanking people. I get all the accolades. I go and do talks and stuff like that. And I always get people saying, oh, you're doing an amazing job. Well, yeah, I do a bit. But actually, it's the volunteers who do the work. We've got a few staff, handful of staff, but we've got about 30 volunteers. And they are amazing, amazing people who just give their time, and they are so dedicated to what they do and so skillful at what they do. And that's what creates the environment that we have. It's the fact that people turn up, we leave their diagnosis at the gate, they come in and they're literally known by their name. So if you came along, you're just Lesley. It doesn't matter what job you do, it doesn't matter what your background is or what your diagnosis is, you're just part of the community, and you're valued for who you are, not what you can do. And the volunteers have got that in their blood. They absolutely understand that. I'd also like to put a plug in. If anyone out there lives in this area and would like to find out more and get involved, then we're always looking for more, because the more volunteers you get, the more work you can do, and we would like to grow.
And I imagine that those volunteers do all sorts of things. So some of them will be people who are into the gardening, but some might be the people who are into the making coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people just literally will sit with somebody and talk for a couple of hours, and that is invaluable. If you're an 80-year-old and you can't get around very much, but you like the environment, you like seeing things going on, it's better than sitting at home watching the telly, then you need someone who's just going to be with you, show interest in you, get to know you well. So that is really important, but also looking after the animals. We've got people who wouldn't have known a few years ago they were experts with animals. They might have looked after a dog, but now they can be treating the toenails of an alpaca, or they could be sorting out cuts that Flora the pig's got on her arm or on her ear where she's rubbed against something. And you just get involved in that kind of work, and it brings out the best in everybody, because there's something for everybody to do.
Just paint me a picture. I think last time you gave us a virtual tour, but just paint me a little picture of what you've got there.
We've got 13 acres. We've got some woodland area. We've got a large pond where we have a bird hide that looks over and sees all the bird life on there. We've got a large market garden, probably about an acre or two of market garden where we grow vegetables and soft fruits. We've got a small orchard where we've got apples, pears and plums growing and one fig tree. We've got a wildflower area. We've got 3 polytunnels where we grow things and start the produce off. We've now got a greenhouse where we start things off in the winter, so that's going to come into its own January, February time to get seeds ready before they go out into the ground. And then we've got, on the animal side of it, we've got lots of grazing. We've got 7 alpacas, 2 donkeys. We've got 5 guinea pigs, 7 guinea pigs, I can't remember, 2 rabbits. We've got a pig. We've got lots of moles. I don't tend to talk about the moles too much, but we've got lots of those. Chickens, geese, ducks. It's quite a menagerie, and it's fantastic.
Just seeing people come in and just get to see the animals and communicate with the animals must be amazing. Yeah,
we've started doing sort of welfare days as well, well-being days, where a little while ago, it was last winter actually, I've got a relationship with the local police station, and they had a well-being weekend for their staff. So members of the police force were coming in with their families on a weekend, and we had a whole day where they could just drop in, have tea and cake and look around the farm with their families. So they brought their young kids, and it's just great for people to spend time outside. We all know what it's like to go to a petting zoo. Ours isn't a petting zoo because they are real farm animals, but they are used to being handled and they're used to being loved. So it's a great environment for families, for people of all sorts. There's not many people that come along and don't say, wow. I remember Matt Marvel came a while ago. We did the Tuesday takeover, and I can remember him. We were standing in the car park. He'd only just arrived, and he'd had a horrible journey, I think. And he just said, "This is an oasis, isn't it? You're driving through the gates, and all of a sudden you're in the countryside." And that is what it's like. It's a bit of paradise here on earth.
So it really is the best thing you've ever done, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's brilliant. Apart from marrying my wife, I'll say that.
Of course.
Listening.
Does she get involved as well? She's Den, isn't she?
Without her, she will tell you that I probably don't give her enough praise, but she's the powerhouse behind me. She was there right from the beginning. We started it together. She runs Thursdays and Fridays, so she's in charge of what people do on those days and what jobs they're up to and what the volunteers, who they're going to go work with and all that kind of thing. But she's also very a key part of the wildflower course that we're running at the moment. She's very good with gardening. Her and our operations manager called Mandy, they sort of make quite a forceful team, and they're both brilliant with people, but they're also both brilliant at organising and doing that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's they say behind every great man is a great woman. Well, I've got 2 of them behind me.
What are your feelings now when we hear that the Prime Minister is going to be giving more restrictions or news on more restrictions this evening? If we went back into full lockdown, would that be a real disaster for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think that what we proved in the first lockdown, unless they simply say you cannot open, which from what I'm understanding from the council, that's not going to be said. We're classed as a vital business now. So I think we learned from the first time round, we're down to probably the minimum numbers that we can have there who will be benefiting from what we do. So my feeling is that we will be classed as like working with key people, and therefore we've got a minimum number of staff on site. We're very clean and tidy and watching out. We've got PPE when it's needed. We are outside, so that's safe, a lot safer than being indoors. And even in the cold weather, we work outside and all that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think that we will still be open pretty much as we are at the moment. So I'm not expecting it to be any worse than it has been for the last month or so, even though the infection rates are going up. Having talked to the councils, Norfolk and Suffolk, we work with both, I believe that we're going to be kept open, allowed to stay. We have to stay open for the animals anyway. We have to look after the land. So having a few people on site, 4 or 5 additional people for their well-being and their mental health, I think is seen as a vital service, because otherwise they're going to deteriorate. That's going to be more pressure on the NHS. So we are there to work as partners in collaboration with the NHS and with the other services, really.
It does sound an amazing place. I shall get to come one day. I'm going to take a break, Jeff, so I shall do my best. Go and grab yourself a cup of tea if you want, and we'll come back to you in just a minute or two. So Jeff Stevens is our virtual sofa guest today from the Pathways Care Farm, north of Lowestoft. So there is a website and so on. So if you are interested in being a volunteer or want to go along, I'll make sure you've got all those details in just a minute or two.
On the sofa.
BBC Radio Suffolk.
So our virtual guest today is Jeff Stevens, who's the Chair of Trustees at Pathways Care Farm, just north of Lowestoft. We'll gallop through your life, Jeff, because you're not a Suffolk boy originally, are you?
No, I'm not.
You're getting there. You're doing all right.
I'm trying.
You're trying. So, you're a Londoner originally, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely a Londoner. Yeah. I'm trying. I'm very hard to trying to lose that accent.
I just think all accents are lovely. It doesn't matter where, does it really? And you mentioned that you went off and studied at college. You studied graphic studies, didn't you? I love the fact that you were the oldest of 3 boys, and that you had 3 boys yourself.
I have. Yeah, that's right. When my oldest was expecting his first, I can remember being so convinced that it was going to be a boy. And my dad saying to me, it might not be. And I said, yes, it is. Yes, definitely. And it was. But he subsequently had a girl, which is really in our family. My dad had 6 brothers and sisters, or brothers. He had 2 sisters eventually, but he was one of 6 boys. So definitely a male-dominated family.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it, how it goes? But how lovely to have a granddaughter as well, because I know your grandchildren are the apple of your eye, aren't they?
They're wonderful, yeah. That's been the hardest thing about lockdown, is not seeing them, because they live down in Eastbourne. And so that's been really hard, not seeing them.
It is really tough, isn't it, not being able to go and not even just being able to go and give people hugs either, or even just to go around. Because my mum and dad at the moment, I mean, when things weren't too bad, I did go into the house, but at the moment, I don't even like to go into the house, bless them. It's just, it's just so difficult, isn't it?
That's the worst bit. I think one of the things that this has brought out, and I really hope it doesn't change, is that we've all realised how much we need each other. And how much the dear ones to us are valuable, and we need to treasure those relationships and not spend so much time in the office. I love that saying, nobody on their deathbed said, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. And it's true, we need to spend more time with people and doing the things that we love. It's crazy.
It really is true as well. So once you'd studied graphic design, you eventually set up your own business, didn't you, for a while?
Yeah, there's a bit of a story behind that, because I didn't set out to start my own business. I worked, when I was at college, one of my tutors was an absolutely brilliant man, and we got on very well. And when I left, he got in touch with me and said, have you got a job yet? And I actually was looking for a job at the BBC at the time doing television graphics, and I had the interview but didn't get the job. And then I went round to see him and his wife, and he said, well, do you want to come work for me? Which was great. I walked straight out of college into this one-man band position and worked. And for 4 years, I was basically discipled into how to be a proper graphic designer. And that was wonderful. And then, tragically, I had left his company to get more experience elsewhere. I was working for a big multinational in London, which I loathed because it was too corporate and not personal enough. And the guy, Mike, who I'd been working for, who was a very close family friend by the time, he drowned while he was on holiday. And I had a message from his wife. I went round to see her, and she told me the details. So I just left that day. I got in touch with my boss, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to go and help her out. So I left the multinational. I went back to her and helped her, because she wasn't a designer. She was just kind of running the bookwork. So I went to see all the clients and explain what was going on. For 2 years, I helped her keep afloat until she remarried. And then I kind of inherited the business. So I ended up running it by the back door, really.
I love people's lives because you can't predict, can you, how your life is going to go half the time, really. You just have to follow your nose almost.
Yeah, it was. I had to do a CV recently for someone asked me to be a trustee on their position. Actually, it was Adnam's Community Fund, and they asked for a CV, and I laughed at myself. So I've never ever in my life done a CV. I'm 65. I've never done a CV, and I thought, what can I do? So I wrote to them, and I said, well, I was born in Guy's Hospital in London, and I passed my 11+, and I did my cycling proficiency. Went to primary school, was captain of the cricket team, and I just went through all those kind of things. And I said, and then when I was 25, I started my own graphic design business, and when I was 55, I started a charity. That's it. They wanted to, at the interview, they wanted to talk to me about the CV, and I said, oh yeah, sorry about that. And they said, no, don't apologise. It's great. It's one of the best we've ever had.
It's all about the experience, isn't it? As well. So, and because you've done other charity work, haven't you?
Yeah, I worked through. I'm part of an active set of churches, and I did for a long time was with an organisation called InCare, which was International Care and Relief, and we used to travel around the place wherever disasters had happened and try and find out what their needs were and then raise money or raise resources. So I started visiting Romania and made a lot of good friends out there and was working with street kids and orphans for many years. And then I went out to Sri Lanka and Thailand after the tsunami and helped to sort out about fishing villages and raising money for people to rebuild their homes and that kind of thing. And then I went to, one of the best experiences was going to South Central Sudan, where there was an incredibly poor village. It wasn't really a village, it was a bunch of mud huts in the desert, about 3/4 an hour walk to the nearest water supply. And we lived in mud huts and took bottled water and pot noodles to eat because we couldn't eat their food, unfortunately. But that was incredible, total different way of life, and but a very, very scruffy place. It wasn't beautiful Africa with all the plains and the animals running around. There was no water, so virtually nothing lived. But boy, was it beautiful for the people and the way of life that they had. It was so simple and so different to anything that you could ever imagine. And I'd seen poverty in Eastern Europe, but nothing like the poverty you see in Africa. That was something else. And yet, some of the most generous people you will ever hope to meet, who give out of their nothing. It's very biblical, really. Yeah.
Tell me some plans then, because you're working with East Suffolk Council, aren't you? A project called Embracing Difference. Yeah, that's a wonderful project. Basically, there are people who have any kind of difference, whether they are very tall or very short, or they're very fat, or they've got autism, or they've got dementia, or they've got a broken leg. They're different, and they have difficulties in everyday life because of the way that people treat them. There's a lot about Black Lives Matter, absolutely right, that should be on the agenda. There's also, I'm not trying to belittle that in any way, shape or form, but at the same time, there are lots of other differences that are as prejudiced against. If you're in a wheelchair, you have all sorts of problems accessing things. If you've got a learning difficulty or a mental health problem, you're looked at in a really weird... If you've got a mental health problem, if you have a breakdown in the high street, you're more likely to be arrested and spend the night in cells than you are to get medical help. And that's a fact. And so Embracing Difference is a way of getting people to tell their own stories. We do video interviews as the first part. We're building a website to feature some of the videos and stories about individuals. So they'll be telling you about themselves. You get to realise that they're everyday people. They like going to the theatre. They like doing sports. They've got, this is what they do in their life. But then they'll tell you an incident about how they were treated when they were on a bus, and somebody saw them and they looked a bit different, so they got abuse on the bus, and they started being sworn at, and they don't like swearing because they're not that kind of person. And you can just see, and then they self-harm because they've been treated, and they believe that if there's a problem, it's their problem. They're the bad ones.
And so they'll punch themselves in the face and make their nose bleed, or they'll cut their arms, or whatever they do. And these things are going on all the time, and society is not even aware that we're putting this kind of pressure on people. And so embracing difference is to try to expose stories of these individuals so that you realise that they are people in their own right. They are as valid in our society as we are. We're all equal. And therefore, we need to embrace those differences, because that's how we become whole. If we're only around the same people that like the same things as us and do the same things as us and have the same income and level of living, then we're very shallow. But actually, to embrace all those multicoloured differences is amazing. And that's what embracing difference is about.
Jeff,
we do talks when we're allowed to. We haven't done for a while, but talk about resilience and fight and flight tendencies. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt because time has run out. But I find you so inspirational in the work you do as well. I'm sure we'll chat again in the future. Thank you so much for being with us.
I do hope so we can talk again. I really want to talk about education.
We'll do that next time. Jeff Stevens, I know he's studying the Finnish education system and thinks that we should take that up here. So Jeff Stevens, if you want to find out more, look up Pathways Care Farm, based in Lowestoft.
On the BBC Sounds app, on your smart speaker,
Play BBC Radio Suffolk.